The Equally Yoked Show. Get yoked for free. Count it all joy, Charles is back online. The Equally Yoked Show. Get yoked for free. Count it all joy, Charles is back online.
Welcome back to the show. Honored to be with you today. Look, we've got a couple things to talk about when it comes to this Prop 50 vote that is going to be happening tomorrow in California. And of course, we have what I'm calling is all Dems on deck. Gavin Newsom is really trying to do his best to get this Prop 50 passed because of, and his reasoning behind Prop 50 is to get, or rather retaliate against what Texas is doing, considering the early gerrymandering, or considering that they're doing this prior to the census, so they're gerrymandering. And this has been around for a long time, but we will have a big problem on our hands if this bill passes. But he has people from Hollywood representing Prop 50 or speaking for it. We have Nancy Pelosi, which you see on screen now. We have Obama. We have AOC. But why are they stepping in? Because they think that Trump is trying to rig the next election? Well, I've got an interesting video to show you because this might help you to understand why we're seeing what we're seeing when it comes to Prop 50 and the lies that are going on about this. And we see that the comments are also responding in the same manner. Gavin Newsom is nothing but a liar. So here's this clip. This should help you get a better idea as to what's going on. Here we go.
I'm going to break this down for you really fast. You have asked me, isn't what is happening in California with Prop 50 the same thing as what happened out in Texas? It is not. And here's what happened. Under President Biden, he sent his DOJ to sue a county out in Texas, arguing that they had not districted that county based on race. Okay, keep that in mind. That was the argument. And eventually the Biden administration lost. And they said, you're not interpreting the Voters' Right Act correctly. It actually is not constitutional to gerrymander states and districts based on race. Enter 2024. Trump administration comes in, Harmeet Dillon reviews what's going on in Texas and says, hey, a couple of your counties actually are gerrymandered based on race, and that's unconstitutional. We can't do that. So to avoid a long, drawn-out legal battle, Texas did not sue the Trump administration. They said, you're actually right. We've interpreted the VRA incorrectly, and so we're going to send this to the legislature for them to redistrict based on constitutional law. They redistricted, and in that, 5 of the counties out in Texas flipped red because they had gerrymandered their state to reflect race politics. Enter California. Gavin Newsom didn't like what happened in Texas, so he put on his crown and said, against the will of the voters in California and the independent commission that voters have required California have to draw congressional lines, I will propose that we redistrict California. Take that, Texas. So again, against the will of the voters in California, against our independent commission that we actively have in California, our governor became politically aggressive and decided that he was going to propose redistricting California to lock it blue in perpetuity forever. Take that, Texas. It is completely different than what is happening in Texas. If you don't like kings, then it is your duty to vote hard no on Proposition 50 in California.
This is why it's so hard for people to, lie online or lie to the people like the governors. And there's just so much information out there to disprove what actually is happening. So we have this article here from the Democracy Docket saying starting October the 1st, a federal court will hear arguments on Texas' recently passed congressional map, which is being challenged as racially discriminatory. Now, continuing on here, it says, the map, if allowed to stand, could give the GOP 5 additional seats in Congress while reducing the voting power of Texas's Black and Latino communities. Racial discrimination is redistricting is illegal under the Voting Rights Act. So this is all aligning up to what she was saying here. But acting purely for partisan reasons is not. It says, as a result, lawyers for Texas are at pains to show that despite Abbott's past statements, race played no role in the map's creation. In July, Abbott called a special session with redistricting on the agenda just 2 days after receiving a letter from the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet. In the letter, it says Dillon urged the state to dismantle 4 minority congressional districts that she claimed had been impermissibly created using race. President Donald Trump has been pressuring the states to redraw its maps in order to boost the GOP's chances of keeping control of Congress next year. Announcing the redistricting, Abbott noted constitutional concerns raised by the Justice Department. So we have a lot of this information. We have Prop 50 literally being pushed by Hollywood, being pushed by Nancy Pelosi, Obama, AOC. So many that are trying to come to the defense of Gavin Newsom. You see the videos going on here with all of these people stepping in, even catering to the Hispanic community. We've even seen what AOC is communicating to the Latino community on ads on YouTube or on TV. But they are in full force to get this passed in California. Here are the videos from the actors of Shameless. I think it's Shameless, if I'm not mistaken. They're going to say it here. About this whole Prop 50 nonsense. Here we go.
That right now, scrolling on social media can feel like you are watching an episode of Scandal. I keep seeing people online saying, what in the B613 is happening right now? I see it.
And I see it. And you're not wrong. So we're not just here to talk about TGIT. We want to talk to you about Prop 50. So Carrie, what is it?
Prop 50 is California's attempt to stop Republicans from being able to rig the midterm elections before voters even get to the polls.
Remember when someone tried to do that on Scandal? Rig an election? Defiance?
Okay, Tony. Now, let's be honest. You know I was devastated when I read that script. I couldn't believe that Olivia Pope would do that. But I will give it to you. It's a good metaphor because in some ways, this is kind of similar to Defiance.
Defiance was about manipulating the results of an election. But right now, instead of rigging voting machines, some politicians are trying to redraw congressional maps in a way that guarantees they win.
So they're not stealing an election per se, but they are stealing seats that will give them the power to control how elections turn out. So
So basically what we're saying is that now California is going to go ahead and steal seats. because Texas is stealing seats. When there's more to this than just more than what meets the eye. So the nonsense of, as some are saying in the comments, the nonsense is that California is doing this because of what Texas is doing. So let's do wrong on our part because of what Texas, as they consider, is wrong on their part. But as we just went through with the article that I just read and the statements of Rooted Wings on Instagram. I don't actually know her actual name. This came up on my feed. But upon looking more into this, there's again, more that meets the eye. So I put a poll out there. I want you guys to vote on this as we continue on this live broadcast. Thank you guys so much for being here. I want to know your thoughts. Email us freedom@equallyyokeshow.com. Subscribe to the podcast. Look, we've got so much happening in November. We have the California elections for Prop 50. We have the elections for New York mayoral race. Andrew Cuomo, Mamdani, Curtis Sliwa. We have Donald Trump is saying, look, out of the two, I'd rather vote for Cuomo rather than a communist. Because socialism is sort of the infant stage of communism. We've already gone over the videos and the podcasts and the interviews from Dr. Charles Steele talking about socialism and why it won't work, even with the tests that Mamdani is saying that they're conducting. But as we continue on here, we're going to see something of Gavin Newsom here on an interview from Meet the Press. And this is an 11-minute clip here. We're not going to watch the whole 11-minute clip. The whole show is, of course, 48 minutes long, this whole interview. But he's going to talk about Biden's competence. He's going to talk about one thing that really put him at pause. This was an event that happened in California with Joe Biden. Now, we've seen this video actually circulate recently because of all this conversation about Autopan, his competency. Now, Kamala Harris defending Biden and Gavin Newsom having to defend Biden. But we all know what kind of train wreck it was during the debate. So let's hear Gavin Newsom talking about Biden, and we're just going to call out the lies as we see.
You stood by him till the end after that disastrous debate performance, even when top Democrats were calling for him to step down. Did you ever have concerns, Governor, about his capacity
I go home
to
with the
serve
one,
another 4 years?
No, I never had that direct. I just talked to the president a few hours ago. I've been privileged to have a relationship with the president. I spent almost 2 hours with him in December, right before, during the transition in the Oval Office. And my experience, his expression, gave me no pause, no doubt. Let me finish. I was proud to stand there, proud to make the case for 15.4 million jobs, proud to make the case for the CHIPS and Science Act, the industrial policy that was worker-centered, proud to make the case for an infrastructure package that actually delivered a real bill and is delivering real jobs all across this country. Proud to stand tall as he was a counter-prevailing point to President Xi and what they're doing in low-carbon green growth and how they're going to dominate the future as it relates to green energy. And he was a counter-prevailing point. I was proud of the fact that he supported 400 bipartisan bills. It did more for vets and has started to address the issue of gun violence. I was proud of that legislative package of accomplishments. The one exception as it relates to the interaction I had with him that gave me pause, one, was the fundraiser in Southern California. And all of us were a little taken aback, but we also were mindful that he had been to Europe twice in about a week, and for the grace of God, go any of us with jet lag and being exhausted. That person came back on that debate night, and that was certainly gave all of us pause.
If it gave you pause after the debate, why didn't you sound the alarm then?
I did privately.
So first of all, he's talking about giving him pause. I mean, he's trying to justify Biden by being jet lagged and going to debate immediately after. But we've seen even still how competent Trump is when he's doing these flights. And by the way, DMV, I'm going to address your comment here in a moment. When you say Trump is not down in the polls, we're going to talk about what we really mean by that because of what ABC is reporting. Okay? So it's not that I think Trump is down in the polls. This is what media is saying, that Trump is down in the polls. But we know the folks who watch ABC. They're going to lean more heavily against Trump. They're going to lean more positively towards people like Zoran Mamdani. And here's the funny thing. Even polls on different news outlets and sources, they're all different. On this podcast, we've done many polls with Zoran Mamdani, the different candidates. And it's generally always different because we have a different audience that comes in. Now, we do have a regular audience, of course. A lot favor Mamdani, a lot favor Cuomo or Curtis. It's been a mixed bag here. But when you have audiences that watch specific news outlets, you're going to say, because how much you focus on them, how much you pay attention to them. Of course, it's going to be the mindset that they are having. But yeah, polls being accurate, it's based on the demographics of the viewership of a specific podcast show. It's not like a statewide, countrywide poll. It's selected. Here we go. So his first, by giving him, well, it's because he was jet lagged is why he performed so bad. But now addressing the comment on what happened in California. So keep on voting in the poll, guys. I want to get your guys' thoughts in a moment. I want to see what you guys are thinking when it comes to voting yes or no.
We with grace and humility, he was going to make the right decision. And so for me, it wasn't my job to go out there. My job was to give him the space. I just have good people can disagree. I have a different approach to all of this. And I lost my father. I lost him right around election for governor. He survived just to see me elected. So many of the attributes of my father, I remember. He reminds me so much. I'll be candid with you. This is me speaking as a human being. Reminds me of Joe Biden. I wasn't going to do that to him. He was going to make the right decision, and he did. Question is the timing, okay. But the bottom line, I was proud and continue to be proud to make a case for his record, and certainly in contrast to the record of this president.
Governor, did you legitimately believe that he was capable of serving as president until January of 2029?
Yeah, I think my focus was frankly situational. It was making sure Donald Trump didn't get back into office to experience everything that we're experiencing today. And there was no interaction I had that suggested otherwise.
What?
Basically avoided the question, then goes on to say, look, it was more just to get Trump, to prevent Trump from being reelected. So not even commenting on his cognitive ability, commenting on his ability to run till 2029, just goes to show you that it's massive example of Trump derangement syndrome. Like let's not get Trump in office. So we're just going to do everything we can, even if it means voting for somebody who isn't competent. We've even seen this with another one of Biden's officials who have said literally the same thing. And I'll take you there now. Let me just grab the video clip for you because this is also going to be eye-opening for those that may have not seen this. But we've seen Biden's officials, some coming out about his just about everything when it comes to his cognitive abilities. Them completely lying during his presidency. Here we go.
Didn't listen to the.
This is John Ossoff. Okay, I'm going to take you there now, and you guys will see it here. It's wild. It's eye-opening.
We just didn't listen to the mounds and mounds of data that was out there.
I think that like the most brutally honest answer to that question is, you know, when you're facing the specter of Donald Trump potentially being reelected to the presidency, and you have in the sitting president the presumptive nominee, it's understandable that you're not going to be inclined to do or say things that might weaken that presumptive nominee against Trump, given the threat that he posed.
There you go. They said it. They said it. I know the audio was a little low there. Sorry about that, guys. I can't adjust that any further. But otherwise, this literally just shows you the lengths of which they were trying to go to prevent Trump from being reelected. And they continued to lie so they can get Biden elected, and then they put in Kamala without even a vote to institute her as the new candidate. They just put her there. But this would be the moment that Gavin Newsom was referring to in what happened in California. Now, this is from The Sun. I'm not going to play the audio here because it's just music and cheering and all that. But again, this has been going mega viral the last couple of weeks, where Joe Biden seems to be staring off into the crowd. And then here he goes, grabbing his arm. We show who his handler was. His handler revealed the man behind the curtains, speaking into a mic, telling the front man to do whatever he wanted him to do. That's obviously speculation as to whether that's true or not. Biden or Obama did say this in an interview with Stephen Colbert, talking about how he would love to do a third term, but behind the curtains, sitting in his pajamas. But we also have this is a judge delivering major setbacks as the Trump administration is attempting to deploy troops to Portland. Now we're going to look at that in a moment. Right after this break. Subscribe today and get $40 off, plus free meat for life. Use promo code Equally Yoked. Go to goodranchers.com, promo code Equally Yoked. Look, my wife turned to me and she said, we can't go anywhere else. We've got to stick with Good Ranchers. And I said, you know what? You're right. Go to goodranchers.com, promo code Equally Yoked. Let's get back to the podcast. All right, so I do understand that the audio for that ad was terribly butchered, and there was no audio. But otherwise, use code Equally Yoked. You'll get an additional discount on top of the discount they already have for American-made meat. We're talking about meat that is absolutely fresh, absolutely delivered to you in a fast manner. We talk about 85% of imported meat. Actually, 85% of meat is imported into America. So guys, check out goodranchers.com. Use promo code equally yoked and get an extra discount on top of what they already have and what they're already offering, which is $100 off your first 3 orders. That's $40 off your first order, $30 off your next 2 orders. Okay, let's continue on here. This is the judge, a judge delivering major setbacks to the Trump administration. Here we go.
Trump from deploying the National Guard to Portland and its ICE facility, as Trump calls out far-left judges going way too far.
Have some of these raids gone too far?
No, I think they haven't gone far enough because we've been held back by the judges, by the liberal judges that were put in by Biden and by Obama.
You're okay with those tactics?
Yeah, because you have to get the people out. You know, you have to look at the people. Many of them are murderers. Many of them are people that were thrown out of their countries because they were, you know, criminals.
Well, you promised in your campaign that you were going to deport the worst of the worst, violent criminals.
Oh, we're doing that.
Now, mind you, with the 60-minute interview, they apparently posted the transcript, the full transcript. However, there was, I think the total runtime was about 70-something minutes long, and they cut out a huge portion of what is now available in segments online. But otherwise, here's some of the rest of this video here.
Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett joins us now. So the political debate about the raids is one thing, but the legal angle of the city of Portland allowing their activists to block roadways and not allowing them to do their job, well, that's another one, right, Greg?
Yeah, Lawrence, you're right. And, you know, this Portland judge is ignoring what the higher court, the Ninth Circuit, previously said when she first halted Trump's deployment of the National Guard, and that is that the president lawfully exercised his authority, and that judges must always give a great level of deference to the chief executive when he decides that troops are necessary to enforce law and order. The court said that a judge may not substitute his or her own judgment for that of the president when it comes to matters of national security. Why?
And by the way, Tech, thank you so much for your amazing gift. I appreciate that so much. If you guys do want to do what Tech did, you can most certainly do that. It is most certainly beneficial to this channel as we continue to grow. And of course, super chats, they will most certainly be read in priority. So I appreciate that, guys, for any of the support that you guys want to help grow this channel.
Because it's a constitutional and statutory power vested solely in the president, not jurists. You know, this particular judge, Karen Emmergut, her ruling will now be reviewed by the full Ninth Circuit, inevitably the Supreme Court, but it does underscore, I think, what President Trump said last night, that his efforts to use ICE and federal law enforcement are constantly being interfered with by judges. Same thing in Chicago. The Supreme Court is now forced to get involved. Too many judges think they're super presidents who can countermand anything Trump does, and that's not what the Constitution says.
It's the perfect segue because you got another federal judge that is telling the administration, okay, I understand that Congress is not passing a resolution to fund a program, but you, the administration, have to take emergency funds to fund the SNAP program. Now, again, the political argument about should SNAP been there? I was on there at one point in my childhood time when my family couldn't afford it, but to have a judge say that you have to fund it with emergency funding, that crosses the line, right, Greg?
Well, it may very well, but understand that these are not really adversarial lawsuits here in the typical sense, because President Trump says he is sympathetic that 42 million Americans rely on SNAP payments for their basic food. So he is seeking guidance from this particular judge, 2 judges actually, on how to continue the program in the face of the government shutdown where the coffers are empty. Now, the Agriculture Department has $5 billion in emergency funds that might be tapped for food stamps, but Congress appropriated that money for natural disasters. This isn't that. This is a man-made disaster, you might call it, because Senate Democrats have refused over a dozen times to approve legislation to reopen the government. So, White House lawyers are going back to one of the judges today to say, okay, tell us how we can legally use these funds that are designated for a different purpose. Can we use some of it, all of it, partial payments, full payments? So, we'll wait and see what happens, but it's all moot if in a few days.
Now, this is terrible because we shouldn't be relying, no citizen should be relying upon the government fully for benefits to cover their costs for food, in the sense that this should be used as a crutch, merely just as a crutch, not as a cradle, right? We don't want to be stuck in this moment of, if we're going through a hard time, a hardship, now we're fully reliant upon SNAP. And what we decide to do is we decide to get a job, that is under the table, paid under the table, then we can then buy food with benefits with SNAP. Or we just live at home for the young kids that are able to qualify for SNAP, where they just live at home with their parents. They receive SNAP benefits. And obviously there's all the application things that you have to go through with, who's in your home at that address. And of course you can still lie on the applications, even if you want to. How much do they really check it? I don't know. But otherwise, look, we've got what is happening with this government shutdown. We have so much talk from the Democrats saying, well, the Republicans have, and they hold the majority in the House and in the Senate, but the Democrats are instituting the filibuster in order to pause, to not vote, and to continue on with the debate. So this is eye-opening, because we have Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins literally speaking on the SNAP benefits, the increase in SNAP benefits in, I want to say 2024. We're going to go to that video here, and she's going to really bring some eye-opening data points here. Here we go.
As the government shutdown shows no signs of letting up, a federal judge is giving the administration until tomorrow to explain how it plans to temporarily fund SNAP so that 42 million Americans don't go hungry. Our next guest says that despite what Democrats say, the USDA cannot be used as a contingency fund. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins joins us now. Brooke, so great to have you on. I know you're somebody who cares very deeply about families and children. I know you want them to get those benefits. Explain why this judge, in your estimation, is not correct in his orders.
Well, first of all, Rachel, it's so good to be on, and happy Sunday to everyone. Certainly, I was raised by a single mom in a small town. We talk about this quite a bit. The president has been wholly focused on, in spite of the reprehensible behavior of Chuck Schumer and the Democrats, and shutting the government down and working to pay the military, working to keep the farmers and the farm service agencies open. We've been duct taping, I've been saying duct taping and bubble gumming WIC and SNAP, which are the vulnerable populations food programs, now for more than a month. The judge came down just last week, I think Friday afternoon actually, and said that in fact we do need to use it's a smaller contingency fund. It won't even cover about half of what November would cost. So we are working and looking at all angles right now. The president has been very clear. He wants us to do everything we can to make sure that we can keep these benefits going. So that's what we're doing right now and over the weekend, especially for our most vulnerable populations, as the Democrats keep shutting things down. It's just crazy.
Yeah, you expect them to get a little bit of pressure. I mean, just Hakeem Jeffries' district alone, 43% of households in his district are dependent on SNAP, and he's the one blocking SNAP from moving forward. I want you to look at some of these numbers. 42 million Americans are on SNAP, so that's 1 in 8. 73% of SNAP households are at or below poverty level. 79% of SNAP households include children or seniors or disabled people. And the average household benefit is about $332. Also,
Now, I do want to give a thanks to the 10 joules of a happy poop sent from No Mas Thomas. Appreciate it. But otherwise, what's interesting is what the common misunderstanding as to those that are speaking on this subject of SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Again, it's supplemental. We have to understand that this program being utilized by, as what she's going to go through with the data concerning illegals and Americans, I'm going to be honest with you. I lost my thought. I was thinking about something else. Let me try to get back to that thought. Let me let this continue playing. Sorry, I just got distracted by the jewels. Thank you, by the way. God bless you.
so, Brooke, you've said this before, and I think it's really interesting. You said some of the silver lining is we're getting to look a little bit behind the SNAP program. So we know that 20% of illegals are on SNAP, and that 59% of households headed by illegals.
Okay, SNAP benefits. Look, for those that, it's not even against those that are able-bodied, that are not able-bodied, like grandmas or children. Obviously, they can't work. It's more for those that are able-bodied and really able to do work, to have a job and keep that job. It's nothing against the ones that need to provide for themselves by government assistance. We're all for that. What we're not for is for those that want to just be at home and kick back and not work, or by working under the table doing something they can do at home and relying solely upon the government assistance programs. Again, they're there for a crutch.
Use SNAP or some other multiple welfare programs. Talk to us about that as well.
Well, a couple of things. There's been a lot of miscommunication out there on the program, but this is one of the first things we did when I walked in the day one of USDA, February 13th, is we sent letters to every governor in America being very clear that no illegal aliens can use SNAP. 0, 0, 0. We asked every state for the first time in history, and this was in February, to send us their data and let us, with DOJ and a war room, actually start going through this data to better understand how this explosion of SNAP benefits happened under Joe Biden. We increased almost 40% on this program in just a couple of years under the Biden administration. Of course, we know they were trying to buy the election, but that's a conversation for another time. And since we have asked for that data, 29 states have complied. Of course, almost all the red states, a couple of couple blue states too. But in that data, and I haven't talked about this yet publicly, in that data we've studied about $100 billion in spend. We have found thousands and thousands of illegal use of the EBT card. We have been moving people off of SNAP. We've got almost 700,000 people, I think, we've moved off just since the president took office. We've arrested about 118 people. So this has been ongoing. But Rachel, to your point, what this conversation has allowed is a national spotlight on a broken and corrupt program. We found one guy in 6 different states getting a benefit. We found about 5,000 people that are dead who are still getting benefits. Like, it is time to drastically reform this program so that we can make sure that those who are truly needy, truly vulnerable, are getting what they need, and the rest of the corruption goes away and we can serve the American taxpayer.
That's really what it should be for, is to serve the American taxpayer. Indeed. Now, people talk about, well, they can also pay taxes as well. And, if they're paying and contributing to taxes, some people think that, well, if they're paying and contributing to taxes, then this automatically gives them a plus for being able to receive these benefits that they're paying into. That's not the case. The reward comes when they seek to do things in the right manner to become a U.S. citizen. And for some, this is all they know. We're not talking about those that have temporary status. We're not talking about those that have real reasons as to why they're here in the first place. We're solely talking about the ones that came under the Biden administration. Chuck Schumer mentioning, let's give them all citizenship, the 10 to 11 million, however many there are, according to his words. These are the ones that came in and flooded into the country. And we had many in the chat debating, saying, well, no, that's not even true. That's not even remotely true, but we have the documentation to prove otherwise. From Robert Rector, who says the Biden administration has brought an additional 6.7 million illegal aliens into the U.S. And this is, he's a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. This is the testimony before the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations. You can go ahead and look that up. This is on congress.gov. This was on January 17, 2024. But otherwise, continuing back here, I want to address two comments right off of what I saw that caught my eye. Somebody said, a Clashmaster 6, you say the SNAP program is not the problem. It's our economy and society that keeps these people on them when they should already have the means to not need it. Yes, it's not the problem. It's the reliance upon the program for those that are wanting to. It's almost essentially like if we did a universal UBI. We're just going to let the government take care of it. Maybe I'm wrong in that assertion, but that's just my immediate thought. Haven't really, Anyway, so it says there's somebody else by the name of Dude Guy Rock Fan. He says, I am physically disabled since birth. I was kicked off a few months before this. I had to finesse the system for my two jobs. Look, there are many instances where he's saying that he had to finesse the system. I'm not even entirely sure of based on this comment, obviously I don't know the fullest extent of your situation. I'm going to take your word for it, of course, but this, again, is for those that are honestly seeking the benefit because of not being able-bodied to work. Now, with the Equal Employment Opportunity Act, we have many companies that should and are willing to provide reasonable accommodation. That's the language there for anybody with a disability. So all props to you. I think you said my two job. I think you meant my two jobs, maybe. Still working, even with a disability. If I'm understanding your comment correctly. But let's continue on here because we still got a lot of stuff to cover. We're going to go over, of course, this new poll numbers 1 year ahead of midterms. This is according to ABC News. And we're going to comment on this in a moment. Well, let's just hear them in their own words. Let's try to understand them. Let's try to understand where they're coming from. Even though we know what the deal is, Trump's numbers aren't really down. Now, I want you guys to continue to vote on the poll that we have up, which is the no on 50 or the yes on 50. This will give us an idea as to, hopefully, to understand our audience and what you guys are thinking concerning this. Because a lot, of course, are for Prop 50. A lot are not for Prop 50. And we've got an overwhelmingly, well, not an overwhelmingly, but we have 53% no on 50. So let's get some more votes in on that. If you guys haven't already voted, 260 votes thus far. Let's continue on with that. But this is ABC talking about the polls showing this unfavorability towards Trump ahead of midterms. Here we go.
What Americans think about the economy and leadership in the country. Results of a new ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll are in, and ABC News political director Avery Harper has been looking at the numbers. Avery, good morning to you. So what are some of the top takeaways from this poll?
Good morning, Whit. Our new ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll found that a majority of Americans think that the country is headed in the wrong direction. About 2/3 say the U.S. is pretty seriously off on the wrong track, while just under a third believe things are moving in the right direction. And when it comes to President Trump's handling of key issues, our poll found that Americans are giving him low marks. Majorities disapprove on how he's managing nearly every area tested, everything from tariffs and the economy to foreign relations and immigration. More than 6 in 10 disapprove of how he's handled tariffs, the economy, and the federal government. About the same number say they don't like how he's managing the war between Ukraine and Russia or relations with other countries. And more than half disapprove of how he's handled immigration, crime, and the situation in Israel and Gaza. Trump doesn't have a majority approval on a single issue measured in this poll. And those numbers, Whit, are pretty stark.
Yeah, and more specifically on the economy, Avery, how are Americans feeling about the job President Trump has done?
Well, 52%, a slim majority of Americans see that the economy has gotten worse since Trump took office. About a quarter say it's improved, and 20% say it has stayed the same. And lower income families seem to be feeling the pinch the most. Nearly 6 in 10 households making under $50,000 a year say the economy is worse now. About 6 in 10 Americans also blame Trump directly for the current rate of inflation. And it's important to remember that the economy was one of the most important issues for voters heading into the 2024 election. So we'll see what happens in Tuesday's elections and if these numbers could be a sign of things to come.
But she said it, though. She said during the 2024 elections, this was one of the main concerns, which was inflation, the economy, and such. Biden, I mean, we don't even know if it was Biden, Autopan, his administration. Clearly, we saw that Biden didn't have, well, he wasn't even all there. Poor guy. They were utilizing him, you know. He is a human being, bad policies, terrible, but he was being utilized and taken advantage of by his own party, and they really ran America to the ground. The shutting down of the production of oil in America, we lost jobs there. By using the reserves, practically draining them completely to keep the American economy afloat under this terrible inflation that we were going through, where he was keeping gas prices low so that they can still win the 2024 election. And with the talk about election rigging back in 2020, the message for 2024 was to make it too big to rig so that there would be no chance that even if they did do that again, the Republicans would still be able to overcome that. Conservatives, Donald Trump, his administration. And with Turning Point USA, with Charlie Kirk managing the sort of, you know, trying to push the youth vote, which they pushed it 13 points, and chasing the low propensity voter. Really got the ball rolling forward to help people to understand Trump's policies with the debates that they got. I mean, really viral. But Trump has to fix an economy that he inherited from Joe Biden. Even in his first term, had to fix some of the problems from Barack Obama. we've gone through the videos of Obama talking about deporting illegal aliens. Yet everybody seems to have amnesia about that. Those who don't like the Trump administration. And they just blame Trump for doing what he did during this time. Now, mind you, social media has even gotten more popular with the use of TikTok, with the use of Instagram Reels. Remember, these things such as Instagram Reels and TikToks and YouTube Shorts, these are sort of the main source where people get their news from. They get them from these short 1-minute clip reels where they can then say, look what's happening. And they don't even get the full context of whatever story. It's always good to chase down the context, always good to chase down what is actually being presented, because the media, as what we've seen from the Charlie Kirk assassination, really went wild on conspiracy after conspiracy after conspiracy after conspiracy after conspiracy. And it keeps going down this terrible rabbit hole. We have Candace Owens and the things that she's communicating on her podcast about Turning Point USA, saying that she wants to go to war with them. Like, it's getting bad. But of course, nobody's going to say anything. Now, this stuff is still under investigation. Turning Point USA, I mean, whether any of these guys, Andrew Colvett or Blake Neff or Jack Posobiec, would have seen any of the footage, because they're the ones that are capturing this, with their cameras. They've got all the angles. There's not much they can speak about here. The ones that were there, the cameramen that were there filming this. So this is concerning This is Joe Rogan and Elon Musk speaking about Doge and the efforts there of basically what happens when you cut off this program. This will stop incentivizing them from staying. Many of them, not all of them, many of them. But here we go. This is this part of the interview.
They've made it impossible to prove fraud. Impossible. They've essentially legalized fraudulent voting in California and New York and many other parts of the country.
There's no rational explanation that I've ever seen anyone give as to why that would be the policy. Unless you were trying to just allow people to vote illegally, because there's no other reason. If you need a driver's license or you need an ID for everything else,
yes,
including just recently to prove that you were vaccinated.
The same people who are demanding that you have a vaccine passport and are the same ones saying you need no ID to vote. Same people.
Right, but
so it's obviously hypocritical and inconsistent.
So you really think it's just to get more voters?
If you want to understand behavior, you have to look at the incentives. Once the Democratic Party in the U.S. and the left in Europe realized that if you have open borders and you provide a ton of government handouts, which creates a massive financial incentive for people from other countries to come to your country, and you don't prosecute them for crime, they're going to be beholden to you, and they will vote for you. And that's why Obama and Hillary went from being against open borders to being in favor of open borders. That's the reason. In order to import voters so they can win elections. And the problem is that has a negative runaway effect. So if they get away with that, it is a winning strategy. If they are allowed to get away with it, they will import enough voters to get supermajority voting, and then there is no turning back.
We talked about this before the election, and then
yes,
you literally pointed towards the camera, you faced the camera and said that if you do not vote now, you might not ever be able to do it again, because
right,
it'll be futile. It'll be overrun.
Yes.
They'll keep the borders open for another 4 years, and then their objective will be achieved.
Correct. If Trump had lost, there would never have been another real election again, because Trump is actually enforcing the border. Now, you can point to situations where there's been, immigration, enforcement has been overzealous, because they're not going to be perfect. There'll be cases where they've been overzealous in expelling illegals. But if you say that the standard must be perfection for expelling illegals, then you will not get any expulsion.
And by the way, for one of the comments that mentioned where's gas $2.34, look, the nationwide average gas just dropped to $2.99. Again, that's nationwide. You're not going to see that in California, where California gas is $4 to $5, depending on where you are and what county. And then, of course, in some states like Texas, you'll see gas for, as much as, $2, maybe as most as $3, depending again on what city you are in, what county you're in. And you're just not going to see that high of gas within these states that aren't like Los Angeles or New York. But Elon Musk brings out a great point here concerning the benefit of mass immigrating into allowing them to vote, allowing them to not show an ID so that they can vote. And there's recently what is on the ballot, what is trying to be put on the ballot, which is voter ID. A lot of churches are doing this, and a lot of places, a lot of people at grocery stores are, getting signatures to have this implemented into, into legislation at some point. But so far, what we've got going on with the Proposition 50. Curious, I have to stop before I mention anything. It says, wait, do you have to show an ID to get on the internet? Wait till you're on the list for every weapon that you have or what they consider a weapon. Wait, do you have to show an ID to walk down the street? Okay, so maybe you're referencing somebody else. I thought you were asking a genuine question. Anyway, we'll move on here, but you hear what's going on with Prop 50. You hear what's going on with what Elon Musk is saying. And just to get your final votes in at yes on Prop 50 or no on 50, so far we have a 55% lead on no on 50, which is an excellent thing. So for the person that was asking about, well, you're not going to mention Texas, how they were trying to do this. Benzo, I'll read your comment in a moment. But we're talking about Texas, gerrymandering, and look, this is not even a law, right? This is merely tradition where they do this redistricting every census. Even a CNN clip that I have here for you to look at, we have CNN talking about and admitting to errors that in the 2020 census were always in favor or in the benefit of the blue states. Here we go. Let me show you this clip here.
things is it helps decide congressional maps.
Right.
Does this have everything to do with redistricting?
Well, it does. In fact, we know the 2020 census, the errors were almost always to the detriment of red states. Blue states like Rhode Island.
Do we know that?
We do know that. The Census Bureau's own audit of its work has proven that. Blue states like Rhode Island were overcounted. Rhode Island then didn't lose a seat. Red states like Alabama were undercounted. Listen, this is just a fact. It wasn't all red-blue, but it was disproportionately red-blue.
Do you think one of the big
Now,
things?
Looking at Texas doing this gerrymander, we were reading an article earlier about the reason why they're doing this in the first place. But the filing, so this is constitutional concerns raised in July by the U.S. Department of Justice, which the state had cited as the reason to redraw were in fact a mistake, that the state now says in a court filing Tuesday that the filing also appears to acknowledge that Governor Greg Abbott knowingly misled the public when he pointed to the concern, saying that Abbott and the DOJ as political cover to hide the partisan goal of the effort. Starting on October the 1st, a federal court will hear arguments on Texas's recently passed congressional map, which is being challenged as racially discriminatory. The map, if allowed to stand, would give the GOP 5 additional seats in Congress while reducing the voting power of Texas Black and Latino communities. This is racial discrimination. Redistricting is illegal under the Voting Rights Act, but acting purely for a partisan reason is not. So there's more to this than we're getting in what the public is saying. So whether it's done on the census, whether it's done in what they're saying is done in the middle of the election, an election cycle, midterm elections, we cannot be redistricting based on what they're saying is illegal under the Voting Rights Act for racial discrimination. Which is why Trump or whoever's urging Texas to redraw the maps. And they're saying, the Democrats are saying, this is all for them to rig the next election. And so what California is going to do is to do the same thing. And the proverbs of men is, well, 2 wrongs don't make a right. But I'm going to leave the poll up because I want you guys to continue voting. This is something that has been also making the rounds online. This is J.D. Vance and Erica Kirk showing a sort of what everybody's calling a weird, strange hug. Here we go.
The Vice President of the United States took the stage in Oxford.
Now I'm going to pause on that screenshot because that's the screenshot that everybody is going for. When we've seen her hug Eileen Marks like this. But the interaction is very, very short. Now, whether there's anything to this, I don't know. But the media or the, social media is blowing this crazy out of proportion.
And the Vice President of the United States took the stage in Oxford, Mississippi tonight. His appearance comes as Turning Point USA makes a stop.
About a 3-second hug. Nothing about it. Just she even mentions during the Turning Point memorial the memorial of Charlie Kirk, that Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife were very close to her during this time, speaking to her, pouring into her. Now, mind you, they're also Christians. So having this being the fact that Charlie Kirk had JD Vance on the show quite often, being that they spoke, they know each other's families. This is more of a family relationship here than it is something that everybody's calling this sort of an intimate hug. But here's Erica Kirk on Jesse Waters, somewhat opening up to, and this is going to air Wednesday, but she's going to really point something out. It's absolutely incredible. Here we go.
Kirk, her first sit-down interview since Charlie was killed in September. Here she is discussing the upcoming trial of Charlie's suspected assassin.
The defense wants to ban cameras in the courtroom. How do you feel about that?
There were cameras all over my husband when he was murdered. There have been cameras all over my friends and family mourning. There have been cameras all over me, analyzing my every move, analyzing my every smile, my every tear. We deserve to have cameras in there. Why not be transparent? There's nothing to hide. I know there's not, because I've seen what the case is built on. Let everyone see what true evil is. This is something that could impact a generation and generations to come.
Squanch Bop, you say Kirk wasn't murdered in a courtroom. He was murdered in public. From many that I've heard of that have actually seen this, said, I didn't even want to see this. It just came about on my feed. It was terrible. We need to have this public. This needs to be all public. None of this nonsense of, you don't need to go, you don't need to be in jail clothes until there's some kind of conviction or rather a plea taken. Look, the death of Charlie Kirk sent shockwaves through America. This was a man who was somebody who I looked up to, somebody who I had actually met very briefly. And now they're doing all this, pulling this off, trying to there's just so much information out there. And I've said from the very beginning, what information comes out by the FBI or by the investigation that is happening, nobody's going to believe it. Nobody's going to be fully satisfied to the evidence that is provided. And that continues to show itself, to prove itself to be true. That nobody is satisfied. Even me, I'm not satisfied with the evidence that we have thus far. But as public as this was, this needs to be public as well. And, in the court, they're saying Tyler Robinson is making these requests, but it's his lawyers. It's his lawyers. Obviously. But unfortunately for you, Squanchy Bob, he's not going to be forgotten in a year. His message has gone far wider and far further, if that's even a phrase, further than it could ever have reached him being alive. It's an unfortunate thing to say, but when the scriptures talk about something very important for the righteous man, if you look at the book of Isaiah that talks about the death of the righteous, It goes on to say the righteous perish, and no man lays it to heart. And merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from evil to come. Isaiah 57. Let's go through that. Let's break it down. When the righteous man perishes, and no one lays it to heart, devout men are taken away while no one understands. Look, Charlie Kirk was a man of incredible faith. Wasn't willing to hold back because of his strong conviction for the scriptures. And he was doing the very thing that he felt that he was called to do, that he knew that he was called to do, not just merely felt, but knew that he was called to do, which was to address these political concerns to the youth, to drive them to what is true, what is good, and what is beautiful. And he had a far reach. And for many of those that have witnessed the death of Charlie Kirk have then gone on to say on social media, this is the first time that I'm opening a Bible. Or I've now come back to wanting to read the Bible for the first time in a long time. Many people coming to the faith to want to know who his Savior was. But the righteous man is taken away from calamity, which is evil. And he enters into peace. They rest in their beds, who walk in uprightness. So Charlie Kirk's death, the believer doesn't take this to heart because we know that he is in the presence of the Lord. He's immediately in the presence of the Lord upon his death. God, in fact, when the righteous man dies, before I get the scripture wrong, let me pull it up. Psalms 116:15 says, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Why? Because now they get to finally be in the presence of God, the one who they put their salvation fully upon, that he indeed was the salvation. But then we also have that God does not desire the wicked to perish, but even so, that all should come to the knowledge, that all should reach repentance. Cosmic King, beautiful. You said, I literally got my first Bible in my life yesterday from my local church. Start reading it. Open it up. Go for it. Start in the book of John. You really get an understanding of Jesus' deity. And I'm not assuming he's righteous because we know the fruits that he displayed or that were on public display, because you know a man by his fruits. And even with, you say, I saw Kirk's TPUSA say we are all domestic terrorists. Because if you remember during the Biden administration, this is what we were classified. Parents were classified as domestic terrorists. During the whole debacle with schools and LGBT and all that stuff. During the Biden administration, that's what we were called. Just brought that up to my memory. But this is who they call us. They call us domestic terrorists. We have even here, let me bring you to a clip here. This is Hillary Clinton sort of beating around the bush when she's talking about white Christian men. And for whatever reason, my internet is crashing out. Sorry about that, guys. Let me grab this clip for you. Email us your thoughts, freedom@equallyyokedshow.com. Subscribe to the podcast. We've got a lot of stuff to show you guys. This is incredible. But here's Hillary
always
Clinton.
been a work in progress. You know, we haven't gotten to the more perfect union, and we fought a civil war over part of it. And people have been protesting, you know, for hundreds of years that, you know, things were not as they should be, given our ideals and how we should be moving toward them. So I think that's what makes us so special as a country. And the idea that you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that never was, dominated by, you know, let's say it, white men of a certain persuasion, a certain religion, a certain point of view, a certain ideology, it's just doing such damage to what we should be aiming for. And we were on the path toward that. I mean, imperfectly, lots of, you know, bumps along the way, but I agree with you, we were on the right trajectory.
Okay. I don't know what went down. It seemed like my stream was loading. Not sure if you guys heard that, but she's basically saying specific men of a specific religion, of a specific color. We know who she's talking about. She's talking about Christian men. The white Christian men are doing so much to damage our world. The idea that you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that never was. This is Hillary Clinton in her own words. Yes, in the original Gaslighter. You're right. But Charlie Kirk did have faith. Yes, I agree with you. He had incredible faith. This was a man who really knew how to speak. This is a man who is most certainly a part of the history books. Still crazy to think. I was just like literally thinking about it. Even listening to old podcasts, it almost feels like he was never dead. Because what he spoke about, the guests that he brought on, and this is sort of the goal that I want to bring here is to have guests, have people to talk about these matters. Thus, some of the senators or the, U.S. officials to come on here to defend their point when it comes to things like government shutdown, when it comes to the lies and the stuff that we're hearing online. Because people need to hear this stuff. So I'm going to conclude this poll. This is 314 votes thus far. Prop 50. We have a 45% on 50, a 50 on yes, or yes on 50, no on 50. We have 55%. The numbers have pretty much stayed around the same. We're going to go ahead and conclude this poll. And there you guys can see it. And God bless you guys. For those of you that are sticking with me on the rest of the show, we're going to conclude the show in a moment. I do want to say, email me your final thoughts, Equally Yoked, freedom@equallyyokedshow.com. Subscribe to the podcast. We're going to continue to cover all this stuff because we have a continuing government shutdown. Appreciate it. Thank you. You would have voted no on the poll. For those that do live in California, go out and vote tomorrow. Really consider the truth of everything. Don't just stick to the talking points. Also, don't listen to the Hollywood actors. They've done this during the first term. Oh, and what I wanted to mention too, even about Trump being down in the polls by all the different numbers, by all the different categories. Look, America was so used to instant gratification. And I wish I could pull up a clip of Charlie Kirk talking about this in a way that is more eloquent and more thought out than I could ever present it to you here. But let me just try to give it to you in the best way that I can understand it. Is America is so used to instant gratification when it comes to how we consume things. We're a consumer economy. We stopped manufacturing. We started sending jobs outside of the country, especially during the Biden administration, immediately reversed a lot of the executive orders that Trump did during his first term to get to get companies back into America so that we can then produce here. You start shipping jobs overseas. We stop becoming a manufacturing body. We then become just a consumer body, which many nations strive to become a consumer body. But other nations like China being the manufacturing sort of giant, we're so used to instant gratification that when we have people saying, like on ABC, that we're down on all the polls because inflation is still up, groceries are still up, gas is still up. We're not used to this instant gratification of, Joe Biden bringing, using all the oil so that we can keep ourselves down in gas, or using, continuing to extend these ACA tax credits for the Obama healthcare, which healthcare has always been expensive. It has never been as cheap as it is, most certainly in recent times. So what's going on is now it's being revealed as to how, to many people, they've forgotten how expensive. They've almost forgotten how expensive it was for healthcare, relying upon the government to provide these credits for them, to provide food benefits for them, and to rely upon that more so as just meaning to be a crutch. Guys, it's key. It's important to understand these things, that we need to no longer be reliant upon a instant gratification effect, but rather a delayed gratification, that things are going to look somewhat bad now, or grocery prices and gas and all that stuff is not necessarily going to go down right away as we would love it to. I mean, they were accusing him of eggs, the first week he was in office, eggs being at a high price, when the items that they were utilizing for the CPI score, the consumer price index, were items, commodities that aren't even purchased by the general population, metals and other things that they were switching out to make it look like inflation wasn't bad. The data doesn't lie. Squanchy Bop, you mentioned providing food and care to the poor sounds biblical. Look, God set up a welfare system for the Jewish people, but it's not what you think. It's not just handing them a paycheck. It was actually that if people had their crops and they had their boundaries of their land, whatever grew outside of that land, within, the sort of small, narrow gap of what was overgrowth, that those who were in need could most certainly harvest that on their own. That the landowner is not allowed to harvest what is growing outside of their field, outside of their property, outside of their borders. That they would allow those who needed it as a way of welfare to them, so that they can provide for their family, they can harvest it, they can get up on their own feet. So they had to still do the work. God made provisions for this. Now, of course, we're supposed to also take care of As Jesus says, if you do this to the least of these, you've most certainly done it unto me, but there's a context to all of it. So as I said, it should be as a crutch. It is biblical to help people, but as a crutch. As a crutch, not as a cradle. So I don't understand your comments here, because you're saying it's a bit hard to harvest when you're sick and starving, though. So are you always going to be sick? You're always going to be starving? So you always have to be on welfare? Look, these aren't comments to people that are not able-bodied. These are merely comments to those who are able-bodied. And also, too, yes, this is when the church should step up and to help those who are in need. This is where the church should step up. We shouldn't just be lazy, kicking back on the couch. This is not a moment to do that. No, absolutely not. You're called to provide for your family. In fact, the scripture actually says that if you don't provide for your own, you're worse than an unbeliever. Read the context, though. Don't just take my word for it. Go back to scripture and go and indeed read the scripture. Don't take my word for it. Like I mentioned, Squanchy Bob, I keep calling you Bob. Squanchy Bob, you say, I'm talking about those that are disabled and sick, those that do not have SNAP and ACA benefits anymore. Again, this is to the comments of those that are able-bodied, able to work, or working under the table and claiming benefits. People that are claiming money under the table without reporting it. Yeah, and you're right. Dude, guy, rock fan, you say to be lazy and kick back is a privilege you earn. Absolutely. At a certain point, you can then sit back and enjoy the fruits of your labor by literally providing for your future that you want to have. You want to be lazy, you want to kick back? Work hard now so that you can do that later. I can tell you this much, kids aren't starving. Because if the parents were willing enough to make sure that their kids don't starve, they're going to do everything in their power to get off of government subsidies or government assistance and to go do the work themselves, meaning more hours, more work, second job. We don't see kids starving where they're malnourished. Trust me, America wouldn't let that happen. I mean, at least not in this current administration. So you're telling me definitively that you have actual data that kids are starving. We have not seen any evidence that proves me otherwise. I'm saying it as it is. No proof other than the starving kids. Where's the proof? Again, no data, no articles, other than people claiming that they're going to starve. claiming that Americans are going to starve. These are only mere claims. We don't see actual starvation photos. We don't see actual, images of interviews of kids now starving. I don't want anybody to starve if that's what you think I'm saying. There is just literally no evidence. Otherwise, you would see this all over the news as what we've seen from when these supposedly these Gazan children were starving. You know who were starving? The hostages. You know who was malnourished? The hostages. We saw this, the images come out as to how literally, how terrible they looked, how malnourished they looked. The Gazans weren't starving. We've seen what Hamas was doing. There are no children starving in America. Otherwise, you'd be seeing all the Democrats jump on this. This would be blasted all over the news. And yes, you're right. It has literally been a day or two since SNAP benefits were to be paid. But High Top Crocs, you're saying you either haven't cared enough to research this or you're being deliberately honest, yet nobody in here has literally mentioned any proof as to what I'm saying concerning this government shutdown. Not anything else, this government shutdown. We're specifically talking about the government shutdown. We're specifically talking about SNAP benefits. And so now we're going to bring up all these other sources as to how the U.S. is considered food insecure. Children in the U.S. are considered food insecure. You'd be seeing this all over the news. You would be. And there's nothing else that you can prove otherwise. You can still cite your sources in 200 characters, my guy. You still can. It is in the news, yet you won't say literally what news source, what outlet, what representative, anything. Anything. You can't prove it. You just can't. And you see, so you just continue to go on. You just like, okay, well, this is what's going on. We just have a huge problem. We just have a huge problem. You're saying USDA. Okay. Well, I'll look into your claim. We'll look at it. When we just literally played a clip from somebody who works at the USDA, literally talking about a corrupt system with regards to illegal immigrants' use of the SNAP benefits. If Americans are starving, why do you think that is? When Americans aren't even able to take advantage of the system that the government put there in place. When Biden allowed the floodgates to open for the immigrants to come through. Maybe for the last bit of this, we'll read an article here. But not an article, the testimony before the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations of the U.S. House Committee. This is the script here. It says, "My name is Robert Rector. I'm a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. The views I express in this testimony are my own and should not be constructed as representing any official position of the Heritage Foundation." Yet he's a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Get that in mind. It says, in the 3 years since taking office, the Biden administration has encouraged and facilitated 6.7 million inadmissible aliens to enter and take up residence in the U.S. The impact of Biden's policies can be seen by comparing the current situation with prior presidencies. In fiscal year 2023, there were 201,144 encounters between inadmissible aliens and the U.S. government nationwide. In 2016, the last year of the Obama administration, there were 690,433 such encounters. This 460% increase in inadmissible alien encounters is a direct and obvious result of Biden policies which deliberately encouraged, facilitate, and reward illegal immigration. Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas recently admitted to his CBP agents that some of the 85% of current encounters with inadmissible aliens result in the individual release into the interior. The government's own data show that the hundreds of thousands of inadmissible aliens encountered by Customs and Border Protection on the southwest border each month, over 80% are being released into the U.S. interior. This policy, or the policy, is not so much catch and release as to simply greet and release. If the current policies are continued, at least 10 million additional inadmissible aliens will enter and take up residence in the U.S. over the next 5 years. The only Biden response to this reality is to pretend it is not happening. Illegal aliens in the U.S. generally have low levels of education. For example, at least 40% of adult illegal aliens lack a high school degree compared to 6% of U.S.-born adults. Because they have low education and low skill levels, illegal aliens tend to have lower wages. They receive much more in government benefits and services than they pay in taxes on average. They receive $2.40 more in benefits and services for every $1 in taxes paid. As a group, illegal aliens impose a net fiscal cost, government benefits received minus taxes paid, of $110 billion per year on U.S. taxpayers. How much is $110 billion? It is the equivalent of an 82% tax on every gallon of gas sold in the U.S. As an illegal alien population continues to grow rapidly, these costs will soar. The left not only supports the massive outgoing wave of millions of illegal aliens into the U.S., it also demands these illegals be given amnesty, citizenship. Amnesty would give illegals greater access to government benefits, further increasing taxpayer costs. If the current illegal alien population were granted amnesty, the net long-term cost to taxpayers would be $5 trillion. That is the equivalent of roughly $50,000 for each household currently paying income tax. So you wonder why America is starving? You wonder why? Because we had this influx during the Biden administration. There's my source. And now you're saying I'm ignoring the chat when I'm providing you a source. So indeed, are you then listening? And you're absolutely right, Spider Venom. You see starving children, feed them, do something to help them. I haven't seen of anything of such, of starving children. So we're going to stop here because we clearly have those that are opposing the information I just gave them. They're not listening. They don't care. And they said, you'd rather talk about illegal immigrations when you don't admit or this and that. That's funny. You don't listen. We're talking about SNAP benefits. And for those that are saying that I don't look this up or any of that, that's crazy. That's crazy. But I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Those who do care about this podcast, those who want to continue to see it grow, a simple subscribe will do the best possible way to bring this, to grow this podcast, to have representatives to speak on this matter. So, guys, I appreciate you guys' candor, appreciate you guys' conversations. Look, I'm praying for you guys. I pray you guys do the research, understand everything understand that what you see online is not the full story. Go and do the research. Even anything that I say concerning scripture, concerning the information I just put out for you, please go back, do the research, and see if what I'm saying is true. You guys are absolutely amazing. And those that are actually trying to, reveal the truth. Dead man lives. God bless you. And for those that are just subscribing, God bless you guys. Appreciate you guys in the chat. And let's continue to spread the truth of the matter of all of this, because this needs to be shared. This needs to be talked about. You guys have been such a blessing. I appreciate that. And I will see you guys in the next one. I'm going to play this quick ad, and then you guys can continue debating should you guys want to stay in the chat to debate. See you guys in the next one. Peace. In the midst of everything that's going on in the world, I love when I can come home and gather around the dinner table and enjoy a nice meal with my family. Let me tell you about Good Ranchers. I'm excited because holidays are around the corner and I get to share our home-cooked meals with my family and friends. That's classic American burgers, sirloin steaks, spicy chipotle chicken, but I wasn't always this excited. I used to think grocery store meat labeled product of the USA meant American-raised meat, until I found out that over 85% of grass-fed beef sold in America is imported. Good Ranchers is meat I can trust. It's 100% American, and all their cuts come from local farms and ranches. Subscribe today and get $40 off, plus free meat for life. Use promo code Equally Yoked. Go to goodranchers.com, promo code Equally Yoked. Look, my wife turned to me and she said, "I'm sorry, honey, but we can't go anywhere else. We've got to stick with Good Ranchers." And I said, "You know what? You're right." Go to goodranchers.com, promo code Equally Yoked. Let's get back to the podcast.